So, hello, welcome, loves. I'm so excited for this new episode of About Her today with the wonderful Cassandra. Thank you so much for being here. I am really excited for our conversation.
Yeah, I'm super excited too. I know I told you over email that with our scheduling challenges, leading up to this, to me, that's always a surefire sign that something
Oh,
magical is about to happen. That's usually it's that resistance, it's those challenges, it's those obstacles before anything magical happens. And so I was like, we've had way too many challenges. And so this is going to be like just the best conversation. So I'm really, really excited about being here.
thank you for sharing that for starters. And I would love to hop into resistance and how, because that's a perspective shift that is, I think, like really huge. Because normally we shy away from resistance. But before we go into that, I would love to ask you to, well, kind of tell us a bit about you, about how you came out to the point where you are right now in life.
Yeah, so my story starts well technically 45 years ago, but I'll start about 12 years ago. Where I started my health and fitness journey around the same time that I started my spiritual journey. So my part of my backstory is that I was married to a minister for 7 years. I was a minister's wife. And I really was challenged while I was in the church. And so I left the church. And so naturally, my marriage ended shortly thereafter. But it finally gave me permission to go in search of the answers and that knowing that I had that I just wasn't allowed to explore when I was married to a minister. And this is around the same time, though, also that I had a young baby. My son was about to turn 1, and I was struggling to lose the baby weight. And I remember one day I was doing jumping lunges and I dislocated my knee and I was furious. And so I went to Google to find ways to stay in shape without hurting my knee. And I stumbled on bodybuilding.com and I was in awe of the women that I saw there. I had no idea that women had muscle, they looked like that. I was just so fascinated. And so my next Google search actually was to find a coach. And I found a coach within 10 miles of me. And the next closest coach was like over 50 miles away. And I was like, well, that's a sign for sure that I'm supposed to do this. Even though I don't know what I'm doing and I can't afford to do this, I'm doing this. And so I ended up competing for 5 years before getting my pro card in 2016. But on that journey, I had my spiritual kind of awakening one day in the gym. I was getting ready for a show, for a bodybuilding show. The week before is called Peak Week. And during Peak Week, you are intentionally dehydrating your body. You're not eating carbs. I was really tired. Felt like I was going to die. And I remember like, oh my gosh, why am I doing this? And for the first time in a long time, the first time since I'd left the church, God spoke to me loud and clear from inside, which is why I knew who it was. But source, spirit, God, whatever you believe in, said, this is what we came for. And I got a download and I instantly knew that having a body was the whole entire purpose of us being here. The reason spirit leaves non-physical to come into the physical is because of this body right here. And so the ache that I had in my lungs trying to catch my breath and the soreness in my muscles and the sweat on my body was all so beautiful to spirit to experience through me. And I became really, really clear in that moment that we are souls first having a human experience, not bodies or humans that just so happen to have a soul. And that prioritization of who I am changed everything. And I fell in love with the fact that I had a body. I was like, ooh, we don't have to have bodies, but we do, right? So what is this thing for? How do I use this? What can it do?
Cool.
And I went on the bodybuilding journey. I became a yogi. I studied martial arts, nutrition. I owned a gym. I sold supplements. Like I just went on this deep dive journey into all the different things we can do and engage with our body. And always though understanding that this was spirit enjoying the opportunity to engage in all of these things. And at that time also my career was going like this, I during that bodybuilding journey was getting the promotions. I was getting the raises. I was moving up the corporate ladder in human resources. Phenomenal. And I was clear. I was clear that it was my health and well-being and the energy that I was carrying myself in that spoke to the world, and it responded in kind. And so, since then, that, like I said, that was 12 years ago, that this all, was happening. And at the time, I don't think the collective was using, I don't think that at the time the collective understood the connection between spirituality and our body. I mean, maybe some did, but it wasn't nearly, I don't think, as accepting as it is today. And so back then, as I was talking about like something phenomenal, I was like, you guys, like, yeah, my abs are great. Yeah, I got a trophy. That's fantastic. But do you understand something is happening inside of me? I'm literally transforming, like I'm changing form. And what you see on the outside is only the overflow from what's happening inside of me. Like, I need you guys to understand that, but no one wanted to listen to me. It was all, how do you get a flat abs? How do you get a big butt? Like, that was all people wanted to talk about. And so I became very frustrated and disenchanted with the industry and floated in and out for many, many years until fast forward. Well, I would say fast forward to around COVID, where I think the world experienced kind of like this collective spiritual awakening. Because after COVID, everything changed once. I think we can all agree with that. But it was also the first time that many of us were really paying attention to our health and our well-being. And that was when I founded my company, Oriara. And Oriara has taken many iterations over time. But as it stands today, it's a self-care company that teaches women traditional wellness practices, but for today's modern women. And those wellness practices tie us back to our divinity. Those wellness practices take these very, again, traditional practices that have been around since the beginning of time. And to give you some examples, I'm talking about resting, right? Getting 8 hours of rest every night, because not only is that restorative to our body, but it's a portal to our spiritual life, right? And the answers and the solutions that we're looking for. So as opposed to going to bed begrudgingly because you didn't finish that or didn't get that done, go to bed with peace on your heart, knowing you can give it to whoever you give it to, and your answers will arrive in the portal that sleep is. So it's things like that that I'm really reviving and bringing hopefully back to the mainstream for women to understand that caring for ourselves and loving ourselves and taking care of our body is so much more simple than we've been taught, and to begin to provide some relief. I want women, when they come across me and my website and the work that I do, I want them to feel like, that's it.
Brilliant.
That's all I've got to do. It's not that complicated. Like that's the emotion this work evokes. And it's been an honor and a privilege to be shared and then deliver these codes that I've received about health and well-being and self-care.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I literally have about 1,000 questions. So I try to kind of structurize it in my head. I think what it comes really down to is the perspective shift. And I see that in a lot of examples that you have just given. And maybe it's like the most important thing that we can ever do in whatever topic we are in, whatever challenge we are in right now, is to find another way of looking at it. And before we hit record, we spoke about holding two truths at the same time and really looking not at, is the world black, is the world white, that's the right thing to do, that's the wrong thing to do, but kind of trying to use our God-given, universe-given, however, ability to merge things that look like they cannot, because that's where the magic is happening. And what you said about how we can use the body in a way that is meant to be used because it's the vehicle we have in this life.
Yeah.
I can only imagine how frustrated you must have been when you started that journey, because even now I feel nobody's talking about it, and it has gotten better, definitely. But overcoming this superficial way of looking at do I look good? Do I have the right kind of muscles in the right kind of places, to this is a spiritual practice for this amazing vehicle that I have on this journey, that's like a really big shift in how you treat that physical thing that you call your body. And I think that's like the shift that is often still not happening in the spiritual community. I would love to like have your opinion on that, because I don't see it really often. People do somatics, but it's like more of a like partialized thing, but not of a like what I imagine your company to be is like the holistic, wholesome practice of like this whole thing is amazing, not just the one yoga class you do every week, but it's more about like everything.
It is. It's absolutely about everything. And, it's that perspective shift that has led me to be consistent over the past 12 years. Like people who meet me now or see me now, rather, like back when they met me in my bodybuilding days or any point in between, there was like, oh, you are still in great shape. You look amazing. Like you haven't fallen off. And and I want people to understand that's not because I'm like anything special. It's just because, well, actually I am. I recognize I'm divine. Actually, it's because, the effortlessness with which I'm able to practice self-care and care for myself is because I'm fully aware that the divine is who I am, and any place the divine dwells is sacred. And so everything I do with my body, everything it comes in contact with, then makes it a spiritual practice. And, we talk a lot about as above, so below, but like there really is an as above, so below when it comes to our body. And I think in the spiritual community, we want to be so dismissive of the so below, right? Because we're supposed to be unattached. Not supposed to get, too tied to the body and earthly things and worldly things. And, some religions, if we go the religious route, believe the body is sinful, at birth. Like there's that whole side of the spiritual spectrum. And so there's a lot of either dismissing, ignoring, or abusing the physical body in the name of spirituality or in the name of religion. But to your point about holding two truths to be true at the same time, it's like, yes, there are aspects of having a body that we don't want to over index on. We don't want to over focus on. Absolutely. That leads to things like addictions or, abusive food or not eating food, like just whatever the case. It leads to lots of those types of things. But we need to hold the truth. We have to hold the truth. We are obligated to hold the truth that our body is divine. It is special. And even though we're not just our physical form, but we are so much greater. There's a whole non-physical aspect of who we are that is also true. But they are married together. They're married together. And as long as we have a body, that means it has a purpose. And one of my favorite quote actually that I came up with is that when you have a calling on your life, you must protect it with your health. And I think people don't realize that we all have a calling, whether that's as a mother, a wife, a sister, a best friend, a business owner, an employee, a boss, whatever, a pet mother, whatever your calling is, you have one. And no one's asking you to be a martyr to those things. We often are like, oh, I'll die for my kids. I'll die for my husband. I'll die for my job. I'll die for my clients. But it's like, no one's asking you for that. Stop it. Will you live healthy for them? Will you just simply, take care of your body for them? You don't need to be a martyr, right? And but it is this acceptance. It really requires an acceptance of the body. We are here in non-physical form for a reason. Spirit could have given us anything to come to earth. There's so many different ways we could have been. Like when you really sit with the magnitude of the possibilities, the endless, the infinite possibilities of how we could have been born into what form, but we have these bodies, and I think it's beautiful, and I think it helps to get curious about it. I think that really is what sparked all of this for me, was just like in understanding that I'm an eternal spirit who's been here many, many, many times, right? Here I am again in this body again. Really? Like, I'm not a tree this time. I'm not a mermaid this time. I'm in this body again. So like, again, what does it do? What is it capable of? And allowing that curiosity to, just putting it out in the universe, put it out there. And I promise you, you get answers back, and they're very profound, and they're very simple, and they're very inspiring, and they're very they're nourishing, to understand that perspective shift about who you are. So I don't know if I answered your question in all of
You
that,
did.
but
You did. So much more.
Okay, good.
Thank you. What I feel is really interesting is that regardless of which religion we are brought up or which like part of the world, actually it doesn't matter. What I really see, what people have in common, especially since I started interviewing women for the podcast, is these limiting beliefs around our worthiness and our like being good and enough how we are. So you mentioned religion. That's how that's kind of sparked that thought there is like this, like, the body is kind of like not pure, or you need to be ashamed of X, Y, and Z. There's like in any religion, there's a myriad of stories around that. And even if you're not religious, then you could be really superficial when you're just caring for your body, or you're like really out there if you're just caring for spirit. But like this merging together is almost never encouraged. Still, after thousands of years of different ways of living, of different religions, and actually, like you said, it's so simple. It doesn't require that much complicated thought process structure. We here in this body, again, like you said, we could be tree, rock, I don't know, fish, but we aren't. Star. And there must be a reason for it. So this like shameless, non-judgmental approach to everything we do in this physical, I really miss that. And I think it's one of the most beneficial things to do, because we are holding space for ourselves in that moment. That's what I'm doing as a coach, is like actually just holding space for my clients. And then everything unfolds naturally. And I think we can do the same thing for ourselves in regarding to how we feel with ourselves and how we want to nourish ourselves. So you kind of answered the question that I wanted to ask when you said, like, what kept you going was this realization, this perspective shift of, no, it's not just a body, and I kind of need to maintain it so that it's not falling apart too early. But it's like, that's a divine structure, a divine vehicle for me here to be. So of course I honor it.
yeah.
That's where the motivation comes from. So it's actually, I would call it a form of self-love and connection.
100%, it is connection. I mean, it's reverence for like who you truly are. And I'll say that, the body, the God, source, spirit, the universe, whatever you believe in, tells us how important our body is through the clairs, right? Like whatever, if you're clairvoyant or clairaudient or clairsentient, those are all tied to physical parts of our body. And we talk about our senses like, oh, we've got 5 senses. Like, what is a sense? Like, just sit with that. What is a sense? A sense is non-physical. A sense is energy, right? But we are really accepting of those 5 senses: eyesight, smelling, taste, touch, hearing. But think about the word, like I don't think we really sit with like words they're meaningful, and these senses are meaningful, and they are our direct communication with source through the various clairs, whatever gifts, really come online for you. But that's what that's there for. And so, once again, accepting that and coming into that understanding, I think opens up a door to get so much more curious about everything else. But I'm so glad you touched on one of my favorite things to talk about, which is worthiness, because that is the number one forgotten element of self-care and wellness. And in my work, I've got 9 pillars of wellness, or 9 things that I walk women through to kind of come into these learnings. The first one is worthiness. The very first one, the first pillar of being well as a human or as a spirit, having a human experience, is understanding your worthiness. And you're right, a lot of women don't believe that. We literally outsource our worthiness. We go to other people and ask them, or tell them or feel like we have to do whatever, get the degrees, get the promotion, the title, be in the relationship, have the car, the clothes, the body, like all of the things, right? All of those things, we say that once we have those things, then I will be worthy. But I need women to understand that this, once you understand your worthiness, then all of the things will come to you. But
Yeah.
it really is sitting with that, and then in that worthiness, treat your body accordingly. A lot of the ways that we care for our body is dismissive, and it's punishing, and it's abusive, both mentally and physically. And that's because we don't believe we're worthy of anything. We believe that that's how we bring ourselves, back to a place of wholeness, or to a place of self-love, which is really backwards, actually. And so, yeah, the worthiness is absolutely the starting point.
Mm. It's really interesting that you said it's an abusive relationship so many of us have with our body, because I think, there's so much awareness right now about like not only physical abuse, but also mentally and emotionally abuse. But it's always like tied to how other people treat us. And
Yeah.
I'm a big advocate to say like it's your life is your responsibility, and it might like trigger a lot of people, but still I believe it that whatever you call into your experience, you kind of signed up for it, or you kind of attracted it in a way, and that's like really hard to swallow that pill at some point. But on the other side, there's also like the relationship between you and your body, you and your connection to your soul, to spirit, to the divine. And that is so often abusive too. So I don't like the word actually, because it has such a like heavy meaning, but at the same time it's such a good one to describe. And sometimes we need to like have these triggers for others to like really become aware of what we're doing to the body. So like how many people I know, how many women I know who are trying to better themselves spiritually or career wise or in their relationships, but the way they treat their body is not nice. And
Yeah,
it's
it's not
actually the
nice.
norm. And so it's like I think it's really so interesting that one person doesn't eat anything, is restrictive of anything that she puts into her mouth, but is drinking and taking drugs at the same time. And another one is like doing the exact opposite, and eating much too much. But then again, like only organically or whatever. So there's so many ways of abusing our body, or through like too much exercise in the wrong way where you hurt yourself. It's like there are myriad of ways to do so. And I think like really getting clear on what you do with your body and how much this is tied to your worthiness can, just the awareness can like trigger a lot of like releases and growth. And I'm super curious with your background, if you could like reverse that statement, if that's like something you found to be true, to say like the people who feel unworthy, you see that matching in how their body is like healthy or unhealthy. Could you say like if you see someone who is maybe like really overweight, or like really you see the addiction in their physical structure already, would you say it's like always tied back to worthiness in your expertise?
Yeah, so health and fitness are two different things. And so in your health, absolutely. In your fitness, not so much. So the physical shape or size of a body kind of comes down to its fitness level. And I don't find that they're always correlated. You can see someone who is a size 4, and look gorgeous, or be a supermodel, Victoria's Secret, but be completely unhealthy, and not even really be fit or strong, right? Versus you could see a woman who by the medical standards, her BMI makes her obese, but she's really solid and strong and healthy on the inside. So I don't always find that there's a correlation with that. But when it comes to health, absolutely. And someone's actual, and the way I define health is wholeness, right? Is someone who is whole mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, all of those things. And yes, if you're suffering in any one of those areas, regardless of how you look, absolutely, it's tied to your sense of self-worth. And so that the avatar of the woman that you said about, the woman who doesn't eat anything, but does drugs and drinking. She's probably rail thin and probably looks fantastic. She might be high fashion. And like when you said that, I had an image of a woman in my head who's like a boss woman who is high fashion. Everyone thinks she's got it together and she's just too busy, so she doesn't eat. They don't know what her secret pain is when she goes home at the end of the night and polishes up a whole bottle of wine by herself and does whatever. Yeah, I know that woman, right? Actually, I've been her, but they don't. So there's a lack of worthiness there that the world can't see, but definitely she's aware of, and it's then clearly not healthy, right? It is clearly not healthy. Yeah, but yeah, coming into that awareness, it really does. It really does change everything, and it's something that feels scary and vulnerable, I think, for women to allow themselves to embark on, like, well, what does it mean if I'm worthy? What does it mean if I'm like, so then what does that change? And that's a question that I encourage every woman to sit with, like, what would life be like if you knew that you were worthy? Just sit with that question and think about how much comes up, because a lot comes up in every aspect of your life, like compartmentalize it out professionally, personally, in your relationships, family and romantic, how you see yourself, hobbies, just all of the things, money, making income. I mean, all of that is tied back to our worthiness. And so what about your life will change when you understand that you're worthy? And this is why I say that I believe that we can have it all. Like, this is one of the things that I've always stood really firm in. People have been like, oh, you can't have it all, or you can't have it all at the same time. I'm like, that's just bullshit. No, you can have it all. But I believe it starts with your good health. I believe it starts with your good health. Your good health is one of the first signs of your worthiness, right? From which everything else stems, is like, literally, how are you caring for yourself? Are you leading yourself? Are you investing in yourself before you've done all of these amazing things in the outside world that we're so proud of you? I know you are killing it. You're doing all the things, but how are you investing in yourself? Because it starts there. And that's how you have it all, literally.
So thank you for saying that, because I'm a big believer of that too. And I have like had many pushbacks on like, I can have it all and I can't have it now. And everyone says no, and don't reach for the stars, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, oh, it always like made me so tense to say like, no, I don't want to have it linearly, and I don't want to like take back anything I've said or be satisfied with something. I'm really happy about everything that's happening all the time, but I'm not satisfied. And I feel like what you touched upon with health, wholeness, is the starting point. Okay, that's really interesting to like observe the people around you in the city you live, to like see the reflection of their worthiness and how they're healthy. That's interesting. But the other thing is like you said, how much would change. So coming back to this like connection to the version we could also be if we would allow ourselves to be worthy, if we would ditch these limiting beliefs that kind of, because we have been born feeling worthy. When you come out of your mother's womb, you don't doubt your worthiness. Why should you? So there's been some imprinting, conditioning along the way that kind of taught you you're not, or you need to do whatever to be worthy. And I think that's like these deconditioning processes of like seeing, okay, I'm worthy of receiving that. I don't need to do anything just by being like a kid. That amazed me the most when I had my son, was like this, everyone's showing him so much love. He's attracting that much love, but he's not doing anything. He's not eloquent. He can't talk, of course, like he can't even lift his head, but everyone loved him. And for me, that was like one of the awakenings of like, of thinking about my own worthiness, because I thought like, maybe you don't need to do all this stuff for people to love you. Oh, okay, well, so that was an interesting one. And so many people have this like paradigm of, I need to be a certain way, or I need to do a certain thing, or I need to look a certain way to be worthy. You touched on that before. And so my question, try to like unearth it, is what are you walking women through to like really embrace even the fact that there is worthiness for them possible? Because I think so many people are starting really at this basic like, how can I even allow myself to like touch upon the worthiness, not even embracing it all at once, but like really touching what is a what is a way like you kind of gently nudge them towards embracing that?
Yeah, it is. So there's two things. One is the curiosity. I'm gonna always go back to that. Like just developing a curiosity about like who you truly are, right? Like anytime you ask yourself a question, there's something that hears you answer, right? Like there's there and getting curious about the different layers and levels and sides and parts and components of you. Like we live with ourselves, but we don't study ourselves. You know, we study everything else and everyone else. Like we know our neighbor's business, our sister's business, our coworker's business, the celebrity's business, the government's business, but we don't know ourselves. And so one of the things that I really encourage women to do is to just get curious and become a disciple of yourself, you know, like as opposed to the many ways we are disciple to all these things outside of us. And then I've got this practice I call triple A, and it's just appreciate, allow, and align, which we talked a little bit about before, but starting in a place of appreciation, like whatever it is that you do appreciate about yourself, how far you've come, your intellect, your beauty, your sense of humor, your strength, resilience, whatever it is that you appreciate about yourself, like just sitting in that appreciation and doing that gratitude practice. But from that appreciation, begin to allow the desires of your heart to grow, because that clues you into who you truly are. When you're dreaming big, when you let your heart run wild, that's who you truly are. That's the creator in you. That's the divine in you. That's not immature, childish fantasy thinking. That is literally your divinity expressing itself through imagination, through your insight, your visuals. And so, but it's allowing that desire to grow. And it's amazing how when you say that, or when a woman begins to do that practice, it's immediately combated with practicality and rational reality thinking. And, oh, that could never happen, so I might as well not even think about it, right? And it's like, no, stop right there. That's not the assignment to figure out how it might happen. The assignment is to allow, just allow. So close your eyes, take a deep breath, whether you call it prayer or meditation, but open up your heart and allow those desires to grow and allow yourself to dream. And imagine your heart getting bigger every time it beats with that desire, because that is the first step to planting that seed in the quantum garden, or, you know, sending that request to God, or however you see that happening. But it's through the desires of your heart that happens. And so, yeah, I find that it even if we can't get ourselves to take action quite yet towards worthiness, or we can't get ourselves to take action towards anything, allow yourself to dream. Get curious and allow yourself to dream. And I find that those two things will allow you to get into alignment. And I'm sorry, that's the third part. Alignment is like once those desires begin to be allowed to live, then you have the possibility, not even possibility, you're on the path. You've opened up the neural pathway. You've created the path for the journey to start for you to align to whatever that thing is. So it's appreciate, allow, align, and being curious. And these things don't require you to do anything. There's nothing about your normal everyday life that you need to schedule around or fit in or be inconvenienced by. You could be washing dishes, you could be driving in the car, you could be taking a shower and doing these practices, and really begin to just allow, like it's, and I'll just add this one last piece that especially, I don't know if your audience is mostly men or women or mixture, but especially for women, that allowing piece is literally tapping in to our divine feminine. Like if you can't allow like that wild woman desire to be there, you're literally like putting that hand over the mouth of the divine goddess in you, who is like screaming out to be seen and heard and to be loved. And so it's particularly important for women to allow the desires of their heart to grow. It's truly like who we are and are the reason that we're on this earth. If women didn't have desires, the men wouldn't make anything, right? Like we only have this beautiful advanced civilization because women desired things and men went out and did it. So allow your desires of your heart to grow so we can keep having fabulous things.
Love that perspective. Thank you. And it's really interesting because I feel like this allowing, we're talking so much about manifesting, 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 but I feel like for me, one of the biggest perspective shifts was realizing that everything is already there. The creator, the universe, whoever you want to call it, however you want to call it, has already given you everything you could ever dream of and more. And it's not that it's not there. It's not that it's not given to you. It's like you haven't allowed it in. So it's our like proactive part, the doing part that we need to do is focus on us. I want to quote Abraham Hicks with one of the like most important quotes I've ever heard from them. Like, your only job is your well-being, and the rest is not your job. The steps, the how is the universe's job. And I feel like we're constantly overstepping boundaries into the universe's part of the occasion by trying to figure out the how and trying to know the next 100 steps in all of our journeys, instead of like focusing on how well we are, how whole we are, to come back to your definition of health, because that's how we allow it in, and that's how we like really allow ourselves to have all the things that we dream of, which we do with the key of worthiness, definitely. But what is really interesting to me is that this allowing is what has been suppressed as kind of like not the right word, but I'm missing a better one. But there's like so much, especially for women, so much conditioning around, if you only care for your body and try to be as whole as you can, there's a lot of pushback from society, from your family, even your closest ones, normally to say like, that's selfish, you need to care for others first, you need to do whatever, that's superficial. There's so much coming back that might have hindered us from really taking on this like, oh, I'm worthy, I can allow that in, I can have that all, I can really care for my body, and maybe that's like my whole job here. So I see a lot of imprinting in a suppressive way that we are now called, is what I believe, to lift, to kind of transmute into something even more powerful. But this has been going on for quite a while, centuries, decades, thousands of years. There's like, it's a long time, many lifetimes that we have experienced this like suppression, this conditioning of like not being ourselves and having the job of like holding the space, being the vessel and taking care of ourselves so that we can allow in this life, we can call it actually in. So I think it's really fascinating how much it's our part to let it in versus it's our part to like make it happen.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, it comes back to that understanding that we are a spirit first, that we're non-physical first, and that we are made in his image, that we are, what is that saying by Rumi? We're not, oh, it just left my head, but something about being a drop in the ocean, like the drop is the ocean, right? Like,
Yes.
it comes back to the oneness, right? And truly, accepting and sitting in that and wanting to believe it, though, I think is the other piece too, because it's really easy to not believe in the truth of our divinity, because then that's a permission slip to not be all that we can be. And as odd as that might sound, that's more comfortable for some people to live in their limitations, to live in those self-limiting beliefs. It's almost like a comfort blanket. Well, you know, you could take any label, whether you've got a chronic illness, whether you are, you know, a certain race, even just being a woman, we put the cloak of, well, I'm a woman, so therefore blah 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 blah. But I think we wear this these limitations comfortably, because it then gives us permission to not, you know, rise to the occasion of our greatness. And it takes women who are comfortable sitting in their greatness, right, to shine that light, and understanding that that their brightness is intended to, you know, be an invitation for you to discover your own. But we sometimes look at those women, and like you said, you get pushed back, and it's thought to be vain, or I don't know, selfish, or whatever the case might be. Um, but it's an opportunity. I would like every woman, anytime you're triggered by anything, but especially another woman, it's an invitation for you to explore what that's asking you to do or who you get to be, right? It's if we immediately shut down and point fingers and blame and accuse and do all those things, you're literally cutting off your blessing. You know, every time you come into contact with anyone that triggers you, it literally is a blessing. It's an invitation from spirit to say, this is something that needs healing. This is something, there's an aspect of your divinity here that you have not stepped into, that you are being invited to. And so, um, that's a huge perspective shift, though. That doesn't always happen in real time like we'd like it to. You know, you're not in the middle of going back and forth with someone. You're like, oh, I'm divine, never mind. You know, that's just really, that's not how that works. But I mean, that is how it actually works. But it's allowing. It always comes back to the allowing piece. And another piece that I like to share is my second pillar of wellness, which is trust. And trusting in ourselves. And, you know, not that everything's going to work out perfectly or that, you know, we're not going to fail, whatever that means. But that whatever happens, we're trusting in our ability to not just survive it, but to thrive through it, you know, to be a co-creator and look at whatever the things that we're trusting ourselves through. Those are all opportunities for us to show up as who we truly are. When you're being asked to trust, that's because it's not obvious. You can't see it. And it's in those moments, it's in that void, it's in that darkness that all the potential lies. Everything that has ever been built and created has lied in that potential. It starts from that potential. And so if you don't know and all you can do is trust, you're creating in that moment. You're creating with your trust in that moment. And it's like, well, what do you want to be? I choose to think about what would my goddess do? You know, I want to be a co-creator. I want to step into my divinity in those moments. But that's a choice, right? And, you know, we often find those dark moments of potential to be scary and frightening and feel like we're being oppressed or feel like we're not being given answers or feel like we're being tested or tried. And I believe that those are literally all opportunities for us to actually be who we say we are. You know, you aren't who you say you are in the best of times when everything's being given to you. You are who you say you are when you don't have anything else pointing to the obviousness of that, right? That's when you really get to show up. And so again, these are all invitations to trust in your divinity. And these are invitations to allow your divinity to come up. And there's and it really is like a trust and an allowing, because you can't stop divinity from expressing. Like it's in every single woman who's listening to this or watching this. It's fully expressing in you. It's just how many barriers are you throwing up to block it from coming out, right? Like we're all embodied. If you're looking at me or looking at you, Anna, and you're like, oh, well, she has it different. It's different for her. It's all these things that we come up with. This understanding that we all have the same divinity expressing through us. It's just you see less barriers presented maybe from Anna and I that make it seem like it's clearer. So it's not that it's anything more. It's just remove the barriers, you know, allow it to express.
Yeah. Oh, I love so much that your second pillar is trust, because when you talked about the first one, I always thought like, oh my God, the golden thread here is like trusting yourself, trusting your capacity to hold it, trusting the universe to like support you in any way possible. And it actually comes down so much to faith and to this like courage to step into the unknown, which I think is what you've touched upon before, is like this, we rather, or maybe our brain is like wired the way that we rather stay in this familiar hell instead of like going into the unfamiliar heaven, because oh my God, how scary is the unknown. But that's like where you quantum leap, when you trust, when you really co-create this out of thin air, basically. You co-create your next step, or the universe co-creates with you your next step. And that's like, I feel that's like the place of magic, of like really miracles happening when we allow ourselves to not stay where we are, but dream big and really connect to that other version of ourselves that we can be, the healthy one, the successful one, the, you know, being in a loving relationship one, whatever it is that you're desiring. But this, like, even allowing ourselves to dream, we started with that, is one of the biggest thing that you can do for yourself. And it sounds so cheesy, but still, I think this is the part where we can start shifting. And as you said, I had a picture of the seed growing inside of us, because maybe it's not an initial, I've heard the concept once and then like my whole life changes, but it's like growing inside of you, and you kind of feel that worthiness, that trust growing inside of you. And at one point it will kind of like overflow into your action. So not being hard on ourselves when there's no immediate action to what we've came to know is, I think, really, really, really important. And it ties back to what you talked about, wellness and seeing the whole, because there's no exclusiveness. We talked about that before as well, I think, off record, of the universe. So us not having something is not us not having something. It's we haven't allowed it in, but it's already there. So it's like, it will come if we trust.
It will come. Well, and it's like the human, what is it called? Like the reticular activating system that humans have, where we can't see what we're not aware of.
That's so
right.
That's fun.
And so if we're not aware that dreams come true, if we're not aware that magic and miracles happen, if we're not aware that we even have a dream because we didn't think we were worthy enough to allow that desire in our heart to grow and be a dream, if we're not even aware of these things, we're not going to see it. And it's no wonder, as you were talking, I realized it's no wonder so many women lack trust, because they don't have a dream waiting for them on the other side. They haven't allowed it. On the other side of the trust is this, I don't know what, but it's whatever we've talked ourselves into that's practical and is realistic, but it's not the dream. So it's no wonder we don't trust. It's no wonder we don't, kind of put ourselves out there, because there's nothing on the other side. We haven't allowed there to be anything exciting or loving or worthwhile on the other side of that trust to go for. And so, yeah, and then I think it's that's why the curiosity, I think, is so powerful, is because it literally is, as soon as you ask yourself some of these questions, the neural pathways open up. The seeds have been planted that source is going to allow this. They're going to at least start germinating. The seeds might not sprout, like you were saying, right away. We might not see something overnight, but even allowing yourself to get curious really opens up. And the reticular activating system then has new data on its radar that it can pick up on and allow to penetrate. Like when I think about my manifestations and I think about the things that I'm trying to call into my life, I literally think about like animals, like dogs and cats, who they see things that we can't see. They hear things that we can't hear. And it's just because the frequency that they are on versus the frequency that I am on. And so when I think about, like my $1 million is literally right there, but just like
You can.
I can't see it because I'm not on that frequency yet. I can't, it's just like my cat can see everything, right? But I can't see it because I'm not on that frequency. So I kind of see it as the same thing. It's just a matter of, as soon as I do raise to that frequency, it's literally right there, and it's always been there. But it's just kind of like opening up and being available to, making myself available to that understanding. And so, it's simple. It sounds simple. I know that anyone listening to this is probably like, oh, you make it sound like it's just that easy. And it is that simple, but it's not that easy. And I think, that's the journey. Like, that's what we signed up for, is to go on exactly that journey, is understanding that it is that simple, but it's not that easy. And being in this constant state of communication with ourself about navigating this journey and getting closer and closer and more aligned to that worthiness and that trust and all the other things, that come with it.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah.
I feel that's the perfect ending for this, although there are so many other things I would love to talk with you about. But there's nothing more to add to that. So I just agree. And I thank you so much for your wisdom and the inspiration. I have a lot of things that are on my mind, actually, that I'm loving to wrap around. And oh my God, for trying to gather myself, if people want to know more about your wonderful work, which is like so inspiring, they can find you through your brand. Can you share what is like the best way to connect with you and to like kind of dive in deep more into your work?
Yeah, so I would love it if women would visit my website, oriara.com, ORIARA.com. And literally at the top, it says start here, you know.
You're more
So all
than
you have to
easy.
do is hit the start here button, and it'll introduce you to my body of work and everything that we've discussed here, including my 9 pillars of wellness, which I go over in my blog called The Body Ministry. I've also taken that blog and made it into a book that's being published February 22nd. It's a health and fitness guide for women starting. I'm sorry, it's a guide for women starting their health and fitness journey. So it's taken everything that's in the blog and made it into practical, actionable steps for women who want to get fit, who want to get healthy, who've been on that roller coaster and maybe are lacking faith and trust and worthiness. And so it walks you through that internal work that needs to be done alongside the external work for a full transformation. So if you already have a nutritionist, if you already have a personal trainer or some kind of workout program, that's perfect. This is meant to walk alongside that work. I also have a blog for women in corporate who are trying to find harmony between their ambitions and their self-care called Holistic Hustle. So that's on the website. I mean, I do free workshops every month that teach about these principles and these concepts. They're donation based because I really want to make sure self-care is accessible to everyone, that there's no barriers to entry. So this is all on my website. There's a ton of stuff there, a lot of things you can go and just have fun, like binge reading and hopefully being inspired by. Yeah.
I'm so sure. And February 22nd, what a wonderful release date. We will definitely publish this episode before, and I love
wonderful.
that. So I thank you so much for your time, wisdom, energy, inspiration, the whole package. And thank you for being here.
And thank you so much for the invitation. I knew this was going to be magical.